Here, take a look at how I can engage aggressively and get a fast kill or disengage all in a blink of an eye. The power to slow targets and get some free kills when they least expect it. This is the perfected backward stasis setup. Guys, a lot has changed in Edge of Fate. So many of my previous builds now need to be updated thanks to these stats and the new armor archetypes. Today we're sitting down talking about one of my go-to trials builds for Hunter. Before I show you my stats, I have some good news and some bad news to share with you. So the bad news is that I'm going to be sharing with you a subclass that is the least popular subclass to use, at least for hunters. The good news is that because it's so unpopular, many people don't have experience on how to play against it, and this can give you a slight advantage of making some good plays. On top of that, the exotic in this subclass build is going to give you additional damage benefits for arc and stasis weapons, which means that you can get some more forgiveness on your time to kill, and in some cases increase that time to kill. I'm about to show you my stats, but first I need to share some tips, some strategies when building your stats in terms of the armor archetypes, your goals to mod, but also how to build the stats that I have as best as possible, because some of these are still not working properly. Okay, so here are my stats. I'm rocking 150 health, 70 melee, 103 grenades, 102 super, 100 class, and 20 weapon stat. From the top, you can see I've invested into the health stat the most. I have 150, and this is the sweet spot. Typically, I recommend your PvP build to have anywhere between 130 and 160 health. This stat is incredibly important when it comes to PvP engagements. On one hand, regenerating your health faster means that players can't just rush you and clean you up while you're still super weak. On the other hand, you can regenerate your health faster so you can play more aggressive and start engaging in gunfights sooner. Thankfully, this stat is working just fine right now, and there are no bugs, so nothing to change. The next stats I'm going to group up together as the most important parts of my build as well, and that is the grenades, super, and the class ability. So here is my opinion on the super stat, because I've gotten millions of questions in regards to it. I need you to observe your games. If you're playing trials and if you're doing a lot of damage, you're getting a lot of kills, you're getting some close games that go to 4-3 or 4-4 in the match, that's probably a good indication that you want to invest into your super stat, because then you're a player that is capable of getting that super, and that is super clutch in your games. I would say invest anywhere from 70 to 100 super. The more of a slayer you are, the more damage you can put out, the more intellect you should invest, because I think you could get your super. If you want to know my personal experience, yes, I am getting my supers a lot, especially in the sweatiest games, and that is super important to have that stasis super to actually win my games. One last tidbit of information as to why this topic was so important to get out of the way is because they changed the way that it works. In the past, you had a base cooldown and you didn't have to do too much damage and you would just get your super. Now they made it completely tied to how much damage you output inside of the game. So if you're not constantly hitting people with abilities in your primary, it's going to be a really hard, long time to get that super. The next stat that we're taking a look at is the class ability. So I maxed it out to 100 and I have a 19-second dodge cooldown. Dodge is really important, especially more now, because every time that you dodge, you refund yourself melee energy. The higher the melee energy stat is, the more melee energy you will obtain. But in this build, the dodge does more than that. It is also our movement capability. It is a stat that takes advantage of the exotic we're going to talk about later in the video. One tip I'm going to throw at you is that for whatever reason, at the recording of this video, the class ability stat is somewhat bugged. You're not really obtaining class cooldown benefits until you hit increments of 10. So I would advise to try to hit 90 to 100. Basically having like 67, 64, anything in between doesn't really work for your class. The next stat we're talking about is the grenade stat. So I decided to invest all the way to 100. My dust fields in this build has a 42-second cooldown. I did try to invest over 100 stats into this build, and I found out that buffing the damage doesn't actually do anything to dust fields inside a crucible. I'm going to assume that's a bug because it doesn't give you any benefits, maybe not damage, but I expected it to slow faster, something of that nature, but it doesn't work. Okay, so the next stat is the melee. I invested all the way to 70, and that's a special number because if you're a hunter, keep this in mind. For any build that you're playing inside a crucible, having 70 melee stats means that whenever you dodge with the Gambler's Dodge, you're actually going to get refunded a full melee charge. The last stat is the weapon stat, which is the least important one to this build. Since we're not focusing on damage output, this is going to be a stat that I don't invest too much. Still somewhat important, so I decided to keep it at 20 so that I can get 2.0% increase to reload and handling. Okay, with the stats out of the way, let's talk about my stasis subclass, the Revenant Hunter. In my opinion, I think stasis is very underrated, and by the end of the video, you're going to give it a lot more respect. So let's take a look at the aspects. First up, we got Touch of Winter. This aspect is awesome because it improves the grenades that you use. And in our case, we're using dust fields. So with Touch of Winter, it's going to make the dust field much larger and have a crystal in the middle, which it works for a little bit of damage and cover at times. But really, I just want the increased radius of those dust fields. Next, we have Winter Shroud. So this one states that whenever we dodge near a target, we slow them. And anytime that we slow targets, we also increase the dodge cooldown. So two things here. Whenever I'm dodging near a target, they are pretty much stuck. They can't run at me, they can't slide away, they have a much harder time swapping weapons. So if you catch somebody with a primary out and you dodge near them, it's going to be difficult for them to swap to a shotgun to shut you down at close range. And because the entire build has such an easy time hitting stasis abilities on targets, we're constantly getting our cooldowns back for the dodge. I love to use the slow and the dodge as much as possible. It is a very powerful tool, especially coupled with the exotic backers that we're going to talk about more later. Next up, let's show you my abilities. I have the Dust Field Grenade. Dust fields are pretty much a little bubble. It slows targets and their abilities take a little bit longer to get, and they get slow stacks. If they're inside that dust field for too long, they actually get frozen and they can't shoot, they can't do anything until they unfreeze. Dust fields combined with Touch of Winter gives you an ability that is so strong when it comes to map control, stopping aggressive engagements in trials, especially anytime you get a defeat and there's a revive waiting to happen. Throwing a dust field on it can just stop the enemy team from getting that revive for such a long time. This grenade also works well against the zones. If anybody wants to sit on it, a dust field will pretty much make them change their mind. Keep in mind that hitting someone with a dust field means that you can also hit them with the dodge slow, and that will be enough stacks to actually generate a freeze, which means that you can get a free shotgun kill or just some free damage with your primary as they panic. And that's not the only freezing interactions in this build, because when you look at my other ability, the Shuriken, we can also do that here. We get 2 charges, and anytime that we dodge, especially with that stat of 70 melee, we get a lot of shurikens to throw. They're not the strongest melee ability by any means, but they have been buffed significantly to have a little bit of better damage and significantly better tracking. As a fellow Frisbee Titan enjoyer, this has been a really easy transition for me because I just throw the shurikens like they're Frisbees and I get plenty of tags. The way that I like to use this melee ability is to generate free damage for my super, annoy the enemy team with a little bit of extra damage before I go in for the primary gunfight or clean them up with a shotgun. There has been times where I have someone super one-shot, they're running away, and I just angle the shuriken and it gives me a cleanup kill too. But by far, one of the weirdest way that I like to use the melee ability is kind of like sonar detecting, to get an idea of where players are trying to sit at, where they're angled at, you know, are they on a hit glitch? How far are they? It helps a lot with that. The next ability is Gambler's Dodge. So this one states that you just get a dodge. You roll and you get a melee energy, and it scales with your melee stat. As for the fragments, let's start from the left. We have Whisper of Chains. Defeating targets while you have Frost Armor has a chance to create a stasis shard. Next is Whisper of Durance. Slow that you apply to targets lasts longer. For those abilities that linger, the duration will also increase. This benefit is awesome because the slow is going to last longer, and we're applying that a bunch with our dodge, the shurikens, and the dust fields. On top of that, the dust field also lasts much longer. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this fragment in particular is very important to get the most out of the Revenant build. Next is Whisper of Conduction. Nearby stasis shards track to your position. This is an incredibly strong fragment, not because of the benefit, but because of the stats. The last one is Whisper of Impetus. Damaging targets with the stasis melee reloads your stowed weapons and grants you a nearby boost to weapon ready speed. I found this fragment to be so clutch because as I'm throwing shurikens around corners to kind of check to see if people are sitting in a corner or what angle they're really standing at. It gives my shotgun an insanely fast ready speed so I can go around the corner and instantly whip it out to get a kill. So those are my aspects and my abilities along with the fragments. The last thing we're talking about here is my stasis super, and honestly it's quite fitting to finish it off talking about the super because it leads us into the next conversation about exotic usage, and this exotic makes this super all the much better. Normally the super is quite easy to react to because if you're the hunter using this super, you kind of have to get close range to really get this super to work, because if you're too far, and I mean like mid-range far, it gives enough time to the other player to react to it and get away, and if they get frozen they can still unfreeze and escape before you actually turn around the corner and get the kill. So what I'm trying to say is that the Revenant super does have a lot of downsides. It feels much harder to clutch with this compared to some other supers. But this is where the exotic choice changes everything, because it feels like it takes away those weaknesses, and without those weaknesses, the super becomes something that you can actually rely on and use to clutch games. Okay, so the exotic of choice that I've been hyping up this entire time, as you've seen, is Mask of Bacchus. Mask of Bacchus says that whenever you dodge, you teleport now. You get a ground-based blink attack, much like a fallen captain. This is an incredible movement tech for playing aggressive. It kind of skips a lot of space on the ground and you can just close that gap like right away. It's nice to chase someone that's getting away. On top of that, it's really good defensively. If someone is chasing you, you see a Titan trying to shoulder charge you, you pop that blink and you backpedal with it. And now you have so much space between you and that player. And if you're lucky, you hit that slow too, so that player is now stuck and you can hit them with some primary shots. Honestly, it works every single time. Next, whenever we teleport and we come out of that dodge, we get a extra damage bonus to arc weapons and stasis guns. You can actually build into this if you're using scout rifles of arc or stasis damage, a hand cannon, maybe an SMG, and you can actually change your time to kill to be much faster. But for this build, we're making it so that it doesn't depend on any of that. You can use the damage bonus if you want, but the build is mainly for any weapon combination. The last part of this exotic description is that whenever we get a kill while that bonus damage is active, any kill will actually refund class ability energy. This is insane for spamming the class dodge, because not only are you teleporting all over the place, but you're also generating melee energy too. So I had times during a trials round where I'm blinking like 2 times, maybe even 3 times. It's crazy. So if you have used Bacchus in the past, you might be scratching your head and being like, wait, is that how it always used to work? Did it get a buff? Yeah, it did get a buff for Edge of Fate, and it's top tier now. I thought it was always good, but now it's even more insane. The aggressive and defensive capabilities of Bacchus are wild, and just using the exotic for movement alone is so awesome. I'm gonna give you a tip here when using Bacchus though. So anytime that you are sliding in with a shotgun, you get that kill and you proc the dodge, you will also get the benefits of getting that kill after dodging. It helps you a lot with retaining the class ability energy. Before we move on and I show you the mods that I slotted into my armor, I'm gonna drop to you one of my best resources when it comes to making builds. Honestly, it's a lifesaver, and even more now that I found out that there's another version to this resource that actually takes into account the little minor mods for your tier 5 gear. I'm kind of jealous of you because I was scratching my head and suffering trying to make the stats as perfect as possible myself with some trial and error. So at the time of this recording, D2 Armor Picker is what I used originally, and maybe later when you try it out, it might have already been updated, but I'm gonna drop the link to the unupdated version. I think it's like a beta version of D2 Armor Picker that does take into account the minor stats and does them all for you to give you the best build possible. It's cannery.d2armorpicker, something like that. You'll see the link in the description below. Seriously, it's gonna make your life so much easier. Like, trying to do the stats myself was a headache. All right, so for the mods on my armor, nothing much has changed, to be honest. It's pretty standard stuff when it comes to Crucible. On the helmet, you use the targeting mods that best fit your primary weapon. In my case, I'm using Graviton Spike, so I'll use arc energy mods so that I have faster ADS on the hand cannon and some target acquisition benefits. On the gauntlets, I have dexterity mods. I want to be able to swap weapons faster, so dexterity has always been super clutch for me. As for the last mod here is fastball. Call it a skill issue. I don't know. I can't aim my dust fields well and be super fast with them without the mod. So I had to slot it in and I got much better with the dust fields. On my chest piece, pretty standard stuff. We got the anti-flinch mods. On my boots, actually big changes here because I've always been used to running better already as a mod. You pick up an orb and it gives you health regen, but since the health stat is so high, running recuperation is actually the play here because when you get a health, now you get a huge chunk of HP back instantly, so people cannot interrupt that health regen at all. You just have that health increase, and honestly it's so clutch. Next up, I have a grenade mod so that I can have even more dust fills when I get an overpower. And you see a weird mod right there that I've never used before, athletics something. So you put on this mod and it's supposed to give you higher jump height and faster strafe speed. This is trying to mimic the increased mobility effect. One of them felt really good. If you prefer to run 2 or 3, that's completely up to you. I'm completely used to not running stompies, so running one of these mods is actually super clutch. This might feel different in a later update because as the time of this recording, mobility seems to be bugged. So we were told before that we were supposed to get like tier 4 mobility on hunters and tier 3 mobility on titans and warlocks. Well, it seems to be that that is bugged and we're not actually running at that mobility, so we're much slower and lower jump height than we're supposed to be. Weird bugs inside of Destiny, but keep that in mind for now. The last piece of armor here is my cloak, and I'm running the Reaper mod. Anytime I dodge and get a kill, I make an orb of power. I do have 2 bomber mods as well, so when I do dodge, I'm getting faster cooldowns for my grenades, and that's super clutch. The last piece here is the artifact mod, so I'll show you here on the screen. I'm running a few things that just work inside of Crucible in terms of like ability regen, but also if I do manage to get a lot of headshots with my Graviton stasis mode, I do get that frost armor, so it's kind of cool when it does happen, but nothing too crazy going down here. Well, that's pretty much the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you a lot, and I hope you have fun trying out this build. And maybe if you don't try the build exactly, it gives you an idea of what stats and how to really make your own builds when playing any different subclass on any character. There will not be an updated version to this backward stasis build because this is the perfect version, as I'm running all the tier 5s and min-max as best as possible. The only way I can really improve this is with the gear set bonuses of the 2-piece and the 4-piece, but that seems like it'll take me an entire lifetime to really obtain these type of stats and the benefits of the armor that I want as well. Yeah, the grind is crazy. And you know what else is crazy is the love and support you show my channel. So please keep that up. Drop me a like in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.